Thanks, Clodagh, and I just want to thank you and Mary Rabbit from AIIHPC for all your support and giving us the opportunity to present on the joint funding scheme. It's great to be able to talk to you. And thanks again also to Frances from Breakthrough Cancer Research. Thanks, Frances, for giving your experience of the joint funding scheme. I think that's really, really valuable as well. So I'm just going to give you an introduction and overview for researchers on the HRCI-HRB Joint Funding Scheme. Just to give you an overview, what the scheme is, it's a unique scheme. We don't have any parallels in Ireland, in the UK, or indeed in Europe. And it's basically a collaboration between HRCI member charities and the HRB. It basically consists of co-funding of projects of key relevance to member charities. It runs every 2 years, and the current round has just launched in 2021. It supports research projects of 12 to 36 months duration, up to a maximum of 300,000, and charities can submit up to 3 projects to the HRB and a +1 project if that's deemed appropriate. It has a very high relative success rate, with an average of 60% of projects submitted to the HRB in the scheme approved over the last 5 years. So how does the scheme work? First of all, at the stage we're at the minute is the charity opening the call. So at the moment, charities are publishing calls and applications are being submitted to charities. And I will go into the open calls later on in this presentation. After the applications are submitted to charities, the charities manage international peer review and public review where that's appropriate and applicable. They also give researchers a right to respond to the feedback from peer review, and they undertake an internal selection process to select applications to submit to the HRB. Once applications go into the HRB, a joint selection panel is organised where their scientific and PPI reviewers are present who give a scientific score as well as a PPI rating. So that's a patient and public involvement rating. And charities can be observers at those panel meetings. And as a result of the panel meeting, applications are selected and approved for funding, and that goes into the HRB board, who approve the successful projects and issue contracts. So the scheme is funded 50-50. HRB provides 50% of the cost of the project, and the charity provides 50% of the cost. For very small charities whose revenue is under 150,000, the HRB provides 75% of the cost of the project, and the charity provides 25% of the cost. Eligible costs under the scheme include personnel costs, excluding tenured staff, student stipends and fees, direct running costs, and dissemination costs. And then we're looking at the types of research that are supported by the joint funding scheme. And that basically covers nearly every type of research that's relevant to patients. So that includes basic biomedical research, applied biomedical research, clinical research, but with the exception of clinical trials are not funded under this scheme. Population health research is funded, health services research, and psychological and social research on health. What's not funded then, and this is quite important, anything that's not research, so applications that are solely literature reviews or audits or surveys or needs assessments or intervention development, although they may be elements of a larger research study on their own, they're not funded. Studies evaluating full-scale definitive interventions to provide high-quality evidence on the effectiveness, cost, and broad impact of the intervention, and standalone feasibility studies are not supported. They are supported under the HRB Definitive Intervention and Feasibility Award Scheme. Applications which are solely or predominantly developing infrastructure for biobanks or patient registries or any kind of research infrastructure, and applications which are solely or predominantly health service developments or implementations of an intervention without a predominant research element. The HRB won't fund the intervention or the service, just the research element. Applications from individuals who are related to the tobacco industry, and research intended to create human embryos solely for the purpose of research are not funded. In terms of eligibility then, looking at the principal investigator who leads up applications to the joint funding scheme, they must either hold a post that covers the duration of the award in a recognised research institution as an independent investigator, or be a contract researcher recognised by the research institution, or be an individual who'll be recognised as a contract researcher by the research institution. So basically the PI contract must cover the duration of the award, and this is confirmed at the application stage. PIs must have at least 3 peer-reviewed publications and at least 1 peer-reviewed research grant as lead applicant or co-applicant, and only 1 application per PI will be considered. PIs can be based outside Ireland in specific circumstances. They must sign a warrant that's provided at the application stage, and it is wise to work on contracting issues well in advance of submission, and to review the terms and conditions in the HRB before going ahead. In terms of the number of applications per PI, so the PI can only have 1 application, but the PI can be a co-applicant on other applications so long as the time commitment is considered feasible. So collaboration then, and looking at international researchers, co-funding between up to 4 Irish charities who must be HRCI members is possible. Collaboration between 1 Irish charity and an international charity is also possible. Funding of research teams outside Ireland is allowed where there's no research established capacity in Ireland, and that's especially relevant to rare diseases. If the research team includes an international research institution, it is wise to work on contracting issues well in advance of submission. So basically, the researchers are asked to sign a warrant at the application stage from an international research institution that they will comply with HRB terms and conditions. So international research institutions have to sign this warrant. You can review the HRB standard terms and conditions templates in advance, and that would be recommended if you're going to do international collaboration. Just out of interest there for you to note that Northern Ireland research institutions are considered international institutions for this round of the scheme, although this is probably going to change in future rounds. So patient and public and carer involvement is fundamentally important to the joint funding scheme. There are specific questions in the application form, and you can see this in the instructions to applicants, and I have put up the link to the instructions to applicants on this screen. And that's the question is basically, are you using public involvement in your application? If yes, please describe all the PPI at each stage of the research cycle. So the HRB want to see that you've identified and prioritized the research question, whether you've put PPI into that whole process of prioritizing the research question, and also how PPI is involved throughout the research life cycle through the design, conduct, analysis, oversight, and dissemination. And they want also you to describe how PPI has influenced or changed the planned research. The joint selection panel meeting includes PPI reviewers who will review the PPI in each application, and the overall PPI is given a rating in the joint selection panel meeting, which adjusts the scientific score given to each application. So basically our message here is you need to think about PPI from the very start. We've also produced case studies of excellence in PPI, and that's the link up at the top of this slide. One from Cystic Fibrosis Ireland and the University of Limerick, and one from the Irish Nephrology Society and the National University of Galway. They're available on our website. I'd really recommend that you have a look at those case studies, because they basically set out what makes an excellent PPI element to a research application to the joint funding scheme. In terms of the timeline then, At the moment, the charity calls are opening thick and fast as we speak, and they're available on our website as well as the charity websites. The next step for charities is to organise peer review. So international peer reviewers are assigned to each application that the charities receive. That takes place in mid-October to early January, and applicants then have the right to apply to peer reviews in mid to late January 2022. The charity selection panel, that is the internal process that charities undertake to select projects to go into the HRB for consideration. That takes place in late January to early February 2022. The HRB's online application system called GEMS opens on the 11th of February 2022. The one you need to look at is the HRB application deadline. So the applications need to be submitted to the HRB. That's done by the charities, and the deadline is the 11th of March. The joint selection panel meeting then is on the 5th and 6th of May 2022, and the HRB board meet to approve funded projects in June. Then applicants are notified in July, contracts are issued in September, October 2022, and it's envisaged that the research projects start in November 2022. I'm just going to run through some of these calls. These are the open calls that are currently on our website. You can get more detail on them by going to hrci.ie and looking up our joint funding scheme pages open calls. And you can go to the individual charity pages as well, as they have their full calls on their websites. So Deborah Ireland and Fighting Blindness, the deadlines for the expressions of interest here have passed for these two charities, but it might be worthwhile contacting them even if the expressions of interest dates have passed, just to see are they still accepting any applications. The Central Remedial Clinic has a call which closes on the 13th of October, and the level of funding is up to 100,000. Again, you can go to the link to the call and look up their full call. Breakthrough Cancer Research, the expressions of interest deadline unfortunately has passed for Breakthrough Cancer Research, and they were looking at pancreatic, lung, brain, blood, liver, pediatric cancers only. We have Cystinosis Ireland. Again, the expressions of interest have passed for Cystinosis Ireland, but their full closing deadline is the 13th of October 2021. Muscular Dystrophy Ireland, their expressions of interest deadline is the 30th of this month, 30th of September, for funding up to 150,000, all types of research into neuromuscular conditions. Sickle Cell and Thalassemia Ireland, their expressions of interest has passed, unfortunately, but it may be worthwhile contacting them if you're interested. They're looking at mental health impacts experienced by patients with sickle cell and their families. Cystic Fibrosis Ireland's their deadline is the 15th of October. They're funding up to 100,000, and they're looking for research that is aligned to their strategic objectives. So it is worthwhile going to our website. They don't have the link to their call up on their website yet. They're hoping to get it up soon, but the details are on hrci.ie. Irish Cancer Society then has a first stage intention to submit deadline for the 14th of October, with the full closing date on the 11th of November, up to €300,000. And they are looking at cancers including pediatric cancers, rare cancers, metastatic disease, poor response or poor prognosis cancers. Conor Foley Neuroblastoma Cancer Research Foundation is closing their deadline on the 22nd of October. Up to 200,000 is available, and they're looking at patient-focused research responding to unmet clinical need in neuroblastoma. The Children's Health Foundation, their expressions of interest closes today, with their full closing date on the 12th of November. And they are looking at collaboration with Children's Health Ireland investigators in internationally competitive original research. Epilepsy Ireland, their closing date for applications is the 5th of November 2021. They're focusing, their funding is up to 150,000, and the focus is on SUDEP and epilepsy mortality, cannabinoids in epilepsy, epilepsy in women, especially pregnancy, psychosocial aspects of epilepsy, genetic and molecular mechanisms of epilepsy. The Irish Kidney Association, then, their closing date for expressions of interest is the 15th of October, with the full closing date on the 26th of November, up to 200,000, and contributing to the strategic goals of the Irish Kidney Association. And Family Carers Ireland have an expressions of interest up until the 15th of October, with the full closing date on the 19th of November. And they're looking at 4 key areas, up with funding up to 100,000, valuing carers in terms of their economic and societal contribution, economic impact and the financial strain of caregiving, support services and infrastructure, and hospital to home models that impact on family care well-being. Finally, then, 2 last projects. Arthritis Ireland have their expressions of interest open to the 8th of October. They are providing funding up to 200,000, looking at patient-focused research, mechanisms of arthritis, assessment and impact on the quality of life, identification of new therapeutic strategies for arthritis, impact of lifestyle and rheumatic diseases, and the clinical management of rheumatic diseases. And finally, Rett Syndrome Ireland, their deadline is the 10th of November. They have funding available up to 50,000, and they're looking for any research projects relating to Rett syndrome with an emphasis on PPI. Now, finally, just in terms of how to apply, it's important to read the details of open calls on our website. You can go to the bit.ly link there that's available, or just click on HRCI.ie and go to our joint funding scheme pages to find out, and you can find out more about the calls on the relevant charity's website. You contact the named charity and the named person in the charity responsible for the call, who will provide more information and details of how to apply, and the charity will send you application documents and instructions. What to do next? Well, we just think it's really important to be proactive now, building partnerships with HRCI member charities and checking out open calls. It's also important to see how your research fits with the charity's research priorities and strategic vision. We think it's, if you're interested in international collaboration, it's important to view the HRB's terms and conditions well in advance of submission. And also, really, we recommend that you start giving thought to the PPI section of your proposal now, as they look for PPI throughout the research lifecycle from the very start. If you need to, now is the time to line up an experienced research design and statistics expert. Many projects fail at panel review due to poor methodological or statistical design. And now I'll hand over to Frances. Thanks very much for listening to my thing, and I'm really looking forward to what Frances has to say. And Frances, just let me know when you need me to change the slide.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, everyone, and thanks to the AIIHPC for inviting me here today to discuss Breakthrough's experience of going through the process of a HRCI-HRB Joint Funding Scheme. And we've done this twice up to now, and this is our 3rd time. So for any of you who don't know who Breakthrough is, we're an Irish medical charity who fund research into poor prognosis cancers. So those cancers whose survival currently is low, and also who have limited treatment options. And as with all charities, we have to discuss our priorities as to how we address our mission. And so our priorities are to invest in poor prognosis cancers, and also the role of the immune system in cancer, which, as we know from the last decade, can be really harnessed to improve treatment, to improve integration of research into cancer care. So to get those new treatments into the patient and into the clinic as soon as possible, and to develop new treatments, and also to improve the efficacy of current treatment options which are there, and also to be innovative in research in the complete trajectory from prevention to palliative care. But at the center of all that Breakthrough do is the patient. So what can we do for the patient? So next slide, please, Sarah, and thank you for this. So in order to do this, we need to empower patients. So if we want to include patients and the public in our research tasks, it's very important to empower. As with everything we do, a new task, we have to learn new techniques and new methods and new knowledge. So in order to do this, before I started in Breakthrough, actually 2 years ago, I held the first PPI workshop, whereby we sent out a survey we had a public survey on the website asking people who were interested in finding out more about cancer research to fill it in. We wrote to them all, said, look, we're having this workshop, would you like to come? And in fact, we're talking with HRCI on how best to do one of these workshops for people who really were research naive. Unfortunately, some of these lovely people aren't with us any longer, and that's one of as I'm talking to the converted here, but it's one of the things that we have to bear in mind with PPI as well. So as part of this workshop, we went through the research process. So from, how do you develop a research question? How then from that question, how are you going to answer the question? So who do you need in your team? If you're a clinician, do you need an academic? If you're an academic, do you need a clinician? Do you need a postdoc? Do you need a PhD to help? Where is it going to be based? How are you going to fund it? And what techniques are you going to use? And from this, what do you hope to achieve? So breaking research down into this and into the cycle that we all know about was really useful for people who didn't, knew research, but none of the nuts and bolts, and also to go through really good applications and abstracts, going, what makes this good compared to this one? And really, it was really really interactive process. And also we've had several of these workshops now, and each time inviting very seasoned PPI advocates and also researchers and academics and clinicians all in to discuss, the pros and cons of being involved in research as a patient and also as an academic and clinician. And this was really important because lots of the people on this panel have helped both the researchers define their application and their design and their question, and also help dissemination down the line. But they also, many of these people were involved in reviewing the HRCI-HRB applications we received. So next slide there, please, Sarah. Thank you. Now, this is a big slide, but this encompasses all the work you will have to do, because this is a brilliant process, but it is very resource intensive for the charities. So I'll just walk you through what happened during the last cycle. So we had 21 full applications because we didn't have any set criteria at the last time. We invited all applications. So for this, you have to get 3 international peer reviews that have not worked with any of the team, with the PI or any of the team involved. So you have to do so they have to be experts, so they have to have published widely in the field, but they can't have published with any of your team or the PIs. And this all has to be checked, invitations have to be sent out. So for my 21 applications, I had to do this 145 times in order to get 3 reviewers for each of the applications we received. So to get the 63 reviewers. Also, you'll see from the previous slide, I got the PPI panel, a PPI panel of 11 people to review And these were the 11 people who said they would like to be involved in the process to review the 21 applications also. And after this process, it was really interesting. So I sent them the applications, and we then sat down. We had a day where all of those 11 people came. We sat down within the charity, went through the applications one by one, and gave a mark to each. And at the end of this, I revealed revealed the international peer review scores. And what was absolutely encouraging to everyone involved, so the charity and the PPI reviewers, was that the PPI panel ranked the applications in exactly the same order as the scientific international peer reviewers. So this was really wonderful for the PPI panelists. It really empowered them and give them, confidence that what they were bringing to the process was valuable. So it was a fantastic moment, actually, unveiling that. And I was kind of aware as the day was going through, but I wasn't absolutely certain. So for me, it was actually brilliant also. So after the PPI panelists and after the international peer reviewers, the PIs had a chance to actually reply or respond to the reviews. And then the Scientific Advisory Committee had all of this information. They had the applications, they had the peer reviews, they had the PPI panelist reviews, and they had the response to those reviews by the PIs. And that was, again, a long 3-4 hour meeting whereby we went through each application and the merits and, what would work, what wouldn't, what really was, fulfilled the PPI mission and that we wanted to go forward with. And finally, the board approved the number that we went forward with in the end. Now, after all this, the charity then, as well as uploading all of the pieces of the application that the PI sends forward, the charity also has to upload a form about the charity, and also for each of your applications, you have to also document why exactly you are pushing this research and how it applies to your charity and fulfills your mission and priorities. And I have written up here, actually, get the signatures from all involved, from the PPI review panel and the Scientific Advisory Committee, because a few people left without signing and you need all of those signatures. So to save yourself time, get them on the day of the review if it's in person. And once you have all of this, it actually took me 2 12-hour days to upload everything into the HRB GEMS system, which is a great system again. And I have to say, during the whole process, the HRCI were excellent and supportive, responsive to any queries, and the HRB also. So you think you can breathe a sigh of relief when all of this is done, and then the HRB panel review happens. So after we have uploaded all of this, as Sarah eloquently pointed out, the HRB then have 2 scientific international peer reviewers for each application that goes forward from each charity, and also a PPI review. And then on the day, observing the process by which, at the time, there was 32 applications last time, they're all rated. And, during the discussion, the scoring coming in can change based on the discussion. So at the end of the day, again, all of the applications that are sent forward are ranked based on this review, the HRB International Peer Review and PPI Panel Review. And it's after this process that the HRB then decide how many are funded based on the ranking. So next there, please, Sarah. So based on, the first scheme that we were involved in 2018, we received 14 applications. We sent forward 6 to the HRB process, and 3 were ultimately funded. So that's a 21% success rate for the PIs, and a 50% success rate for the charity. And from this, we had two funded in esophageal cancer, whose survival rate is less than 20% currently, and one in lung cancer, and lung cancer has the greater mortality than both breast and prostate together. So we were really pleased that these 3 were funded. And in the next round, next please there, Sarah, thank you, we received 21 full applications, which was an awful lot of work. And in the end, we had 3 funded, which we were really pleased about. So off the 21 applications, then that meant a 14% success rate for the PIs, and then a 50% success rate for the charity. And again, these were in lung cancer, which has a very poor survival rate, in a childhood sarcoma, which is the survival rate is 50%, and in multiple myeloma, which is currently incurable blood cancer. And next, please, Sarah. Thank you. And based on this round, based on our experience so far, what we did was we had to reduce the number of full applications that we were getting, because really the resource for the charity was very high. So we did a more focused call, as Sarah pointed out. We limited it to 6 different cancers, and we put in a new phase, which is the expression of interest phase. So then we could cut down further and refine further the number of full applications we are going to ask to put forward this time. And we hope that this is that we're successful this time around as well. It's an absolutely brilliant, unique funding source, and really it's really good for the charities and for the HRB, because the HRB are leveraging funding from the charities, and the charities are leveraging funding from the HRB to do this really patient-centered, really close to the patient-centered research. And so that's all. I'm available for any questions. I should have put up my email address, but thank you for listening, and thank you again, Sarah and Clodagh.